All right, I see the recording has started. It is 9 o'clock on
No,
or
8 o'clock.
8 o'clock. This computer's thing has not changed the time yet. It is 8 o'clock on November 8th, 2022. This is the planning board meeting. I will run down, we'll start off by running down members in attendance. I'll just go by who I can see first. I know we have one not attending tonight. Andrew,
Here.
Linda,
Here.
Sue.
Here.
I don't see Haley, or yeah, definitely I'm seeing everybody on the screen, so I don't see Haley. Maybe she'll be able to join later. And then I know that Mark Giddings is not going to be able to attend tonight. Okay, so for our first order of business tonight.
Haley just joined.
Where is she? There she is. Haley, I'll give you a second to get up to speed. Hello, how's it going?
Hey there. Sorry about that.
No problem. We were just starting, so. All right, first order of business is actually, it's still a requested continuance, I assume, that hasn't changed. For Concord Academy, a special permit with site plan review. They at 166 Main Street, parcel number 1706. They've requested a continuance without discussion to our November 22nd meeting. I always forget, for continuance, we don't need to vote for that, right? It's just yeah, it just is. Okay. All right, so moving along, our next order of business is also a ZBA recommendation for Stephen and Heather, I hope I'm not saying this wrong, Fredette, for a special permit under section 7.2, 11.6 of the zoning bylaw to construct a retaining wall and perform landscape improvements which require 224 cubic feet of fill within the floodplain conservancy district and 533 cubic feet of compensatory flood storage at 286 Barrett Mill Road. This is parcel 1659. I saw some cameras turn on, so I'm going to guess that one or both of you will be taking it from here.
Yes, thanks for having us. My name is Benjamin Minix with Eagle Brook Engineering. I'm here to present the project for 286 Barrett's Mill Road. Also on the line is Dan Gordon, and I believe the applicant may be on the line, Stephen and Heather Fredette. We are in front of you today to propose work within the floodplain conservancy district. So if you'd like me to overview the project, I'd be happy to share the site plans if that's the easiest way to do so.
That's
Yes.
fine.
Yeah.
I will go over, let's try that one. Okay, should be able to see the site plans in my cursor. I'm going to back up here to sheet C2 just to give an overview of the property. So 286 Barrett's Mill Road. It's a single family residence right in this area here. To the west is Spencer Brook, and to the north is Gates Brook, which meet together and cross under Barrett's Mill Road. The work proposed is a swimming pool addition, which is outside the purview of this meeting. But within the floodplain conservancy district, we are proposing to have a patio addition and reconstruct some of the existing patio and deck. So this area right here is a proposed retaining wall to contain a portion of the deck and patio along the existing building. And so this portion right now, I'll show a photo. So this is the view of the back of the home.
So Benjamin, you have to actually like stop sharing and then bring up the photo.
Yeah.
Okay. How's that?
Perfect. Thank you.
So this is the back of the home. This deck that I was speaking of is this area right here. We are proposing a retaining wall in this area right here. So underneath this existing deck, there is existing flood storage where the floodplain conservancy district is approximately, if you follow my cursor, through here. So we are proposing to fill this area with a retaining wall and underneath the deck. So that is loss of flood storage. We are compensating for that flood storage by removal of the existing lawn space or existing soil in this area to make up for the loss of flood storage underneath the deck. I guess I'll open it up to questions unless Dan Gordon has something he'd like to add.
I guess the only thing I would add was this has been reviewed by the Conservation Commission, and it's the work is the grading under their purview has been approved. So we have an order of conditions to proceed.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The only real question I have, it looks like really there's no real change in layout. It's sort of covering the same area, right? It's just changing up the supporting structure. Is that kind of what the along that side? I know that the patio itself is getting extended out, but where the wall is and where it runs along the home itself, the width of that deck area is basically the same.
That's right. Yeah.
Correct. Sorry, go ahead, Dan.
And instead of it running the entire length, it's just right at that porch. So the structure is overall structures being reduced. The proposed terrace is within the limits of the existing wood deck.
Okay. That was my only question. I don't know if anybody else, any other members have any questions? No, say nobody, nothing. Is it that easy? Are we?
The application has been reviewed by the Concord Public Works Engineering Division for the compensatory flood storage, and they agreed with the plans and the calculations.
Yes, this looks like a pretty straightforward one. So if there are no other questions or comments from the board, I'll quickly open it up for any sort of public comments.
Oops.
If there are
Sorry.
any. Oh. If there are any public comment, that's the point I should say. If you do have a question or a comment and you're a member of the public, please use the raise hand function and I will call on you to unmute yourself and you can turn on your video, introduce yourself, address all of that. Okay, not seeing any public comments. I guess can we get a motion to recommend this to the ZBA? Anybody want to go for that?
Sure. I move to recommend that the Board of Appeals grant the special permit for Stephen and Heather Fredette under zoning bylaw sections 7.2 and 11.6 to construct a retaining wall and perform landscape improvements, which require 224 cubic feet of fill within the floodplain conservancy district and 533 cubic feet of compensatory flood storage at 286 Barrett's Mill Road, subject to the standard condition for the submission of a certified as-built plan confirming the compensatory flood storage.
I'll second that.
Excellent. All right, I'll just run down the line from who I can see. Andrew,
Yes.
Linda,
Yes.
Sue,
Yes.
Haley,
Yes.
and I'm also a yes. All right, I think well, that was quick and easy.
Great. Thank you.
Yep, thank you very much.
We'll be on the meeting on Thursday, so thank you.
Okay, moving right along to, this is one of the first times we've actually been mostly on time. Moving right along to our 8:10 business, another ZBA recommendation. This one will probably take a little bit longer. This is the Concord Public Schools for a special permit under sections 4.3.1, 6.2.11, 7.6, 7.7, and 11.6 to demolish the existing Sanborn Middle School, construct a new middle school, which includes a height waiver, relief from parking, impervious coverage greater than 15% in the groundwater conservancy district at 835 Old Marlborough Road, parcel 310-2-1. All right. I'm not sure who's going to go first. So I will let you all determine that.
Lorraine, the project manager with the design team, SMA. Mike Dowhan, our landscape architect, is here. Jennifer Susie, our project architect. It looks like Steve Ventresca from Niche is still connecting to audio, so I will wait for him. And Susan McCann from Hill International is our OPM. So I'm not sure how we want to present findings, Mike. I know you met today.
Yeah. So I apologize. We were going to have Steve lead off. It looks like he's having some audio difficulties here. So Elizabeth, with your permission, what we thought we would do today is, since we have your comment letter, we also have the engineering comment letter. We thought maybe the best thing to do would be to start with your comment letter, your report, and just walk through it step by step and address, see if we have addressed sufficiently all the comments.
So that's fine. What I'm going to do is share my screen with my report, which again, apologize to everybody. And so thank you for taking the time to review this at last minute. It was quite a day. One planning board member, Sue Felshen, was able to provide some edits, but also point out some questions. So I think if we just run through the report and then we can make those edits, ask those questions, and if the board has additional questions, you and your team can go through and address those. So I will share my screen. So is that big enough for everybody to see?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Hang on, I'm trying to expand everybody's. Nathan usually says I'm not ignoring everybody. I'm just working on two screens. So
Yes.
so starting with Sue's comment and this last sentence, bioretention design, basin designed to treat stormwater runoff from the parking and vehicular access drives will be planted to create vertical separation to break down the scale of the pavement areas. If your team can elaborate, if there's I know what it means, but maybe there's something, if you can explain what that means, there might be a better way to phrase that.
Sure. So rather than having a really large flat plane of pavement, what we're trying to do here is create these large swaths of green space, open space, bioretention areas with plant material, vertical plant material in them, so that it doesn't, even though there's the same amount of parking, it's not all compacted together and feels like one big, large open area. So that's what we kind of mean by breaking down the scale of it. So it feels like smaller individual parking areas with green space in between. Does that make more sense now?
Thanks, that's what I thought you meant. I just never heard the term breakdown used in that way before, but I'm new to the board.
And then running through, many of the comments are just clarification in grammar. So I don't think I don't think anybody's going to have issues with those. And then so this question here. I'm not sure how the back of the building is relevant, even if the building was stepped down at the rear, the overall height would be the same. So the planning board discussed the height waiver at their last meeting and agreed that there was no reasonable alternative to reduce the height for the stair tower and the back of the building. How height gets calculated under the zoning bylaw deals with the two lowest points of the foundation at existing grade, which for this building is going to be the rear of the is it the classroom wing? Is that correct? It's the rear portion of the classroom wing is at the lowest point of existing grades on the site. So I'm not sure how I can say that differently.
Okay, so I think the issue here is that I thought that this says reduce the height for the stair tower and reduce the height for the back of the building, but we're not, there would be no way to reduce the height of the back of the building because it's not about the height of the back of the building, it's about the height measurement based on being measured at the back of the building. Maybe I could, are we okay with just deleting back of the and saying no reasonable alternative to reduce the height for the stair tower and the building?
So Elizabeth, I don't know if we're helping here or if this is your board.
No,
If you want us to help.
At this point, I think it's coming up with
Just a clear rephrasing of
the
this,
appropriate
yeah.
language in dealing with in dealing with the height of the building at the back of the building at those two lowest grades. But if anybody has some suggested wording, Sue has said if we just say alternative to reduce the height of the stair tower and the building.
On the grounds that we already explained a couple of paragraphs above that the measurement based on the two lowest corners that are on the back of the building is the reason why we thought there was no reasonable alternative. But only if the other board members are okay with it. And Elizabeth.
Oh, I'm okay. So I think I okay, I think I understand. You can say
I mean, we could make it longer. We could say to reduce the height for the stair tower or the building based on the manner in which it is measured. Yeah, okay. Perfect.
something like that.
That works for me. Oh, and then we have to delete the words back of the and say just the building due to.
Okay.
I'm okay with that.
Awesome.
Works for me. Yeah.
All right. And then we'll get into further in the revision letter the applicant submitted. They did include the impervious coverage that is expected for the solar canopies in the parking lot. And that's where you see this change from 16.3 to 17.2. And I think you're right, Sue. I think this right here is
I
I'm not
bet it
sure where
came
it
in
came
because
from. I think it came from the applicant's PDF letter, which I copied this from. So
I
when I
bet there was a
copied from the
date.
PDF, it just included this as well. So I think
It
that's
must,
what,
it must have been a running header or footer. That is my guess. And again, the sense of the report here and the language from the applicant is completely reasonable. It's just very confusing to anyone who reads it, because first it says there is a school laboratory. And then it says that there are science classrooms and laboratories. So is it one laboratory or is it a group of classrooms and laboratories?
It's science classrooms. So
Yeah,
we should delete the word laboratory altogether. They're
Um,
science classrooms.
Oh, so if we simply delete and laboratories at the end of
Yep.
the highlighted portion, that
Um,
will fix it.
Yep.
okay, but it's will promote the safe functioning of the school.
Science
Can we say
classrooms.
science classrooms?
Yes, please.
Okay, and then. Okay. And then down here, this was also just a holdover from the applicant's letters. That's correct. I think Steve, you sent me that email.
Yeah, that's correct. And you could even just strike it like that if you want and leave it.
No,
I was-
There's one more laboratory.
ultimately, this report gets turned into the board's recommendation letter.
Yeah.
So,
There's one more laboratory in that last paragraph as well.
oh, okay, I see it. Oh, and there's one up here too. I will make sure that there are no laboratories in here in this school. All right. I'll get that in a second. Sue's note, just clarifying that where this impervious coverage comes from, the Groundwater Conservancy District.
Did I phrase it okay?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Definitely. Again, some grammar corrections. So the Public Works Commission will be discussing the potential increase in impervious coverage due to the solar canopies in the parking lot at their meeting tomorrow night. So I just point that out in here. The engineering division added the statement based on the conversation at the last meeting regarding the natural resources director's comment about the Peabody School. So added the statement from the board's discussion last time on why the board isn't putting forth that recommendation in your recommendation. The engineering division did finish reviewing the revised plans and did have additional issues and concerns with the solar canopy and the stormwater drainage and all other concerns from previous comment letters have been addressed either through revisions or we incorporated them into recommended conditions of approval. And so the first actual item for discussion for the board and conversation with the applicant is the increase in the impervious coverage due to the solar canopies. We did have a conversation with the Concord Municipal Light Plant Superintendent, and he is aware of that if this special permit does not include that additional impervious coverage, he is aware that as part of the permitting process that he will have to go through specifically for the solar canopies, that the increase in impervious coverage will have to be included in that. The permitting for the solar canopies in the parking lot, given the size of that photovoltaic system actually triggers section 7.9 of the zoning bylaw for a large scale ground mounted solar. So that is not part of this application. It was not part of the legal notice. It was not part of the application. So that is something he is aware of, and he knows he will have to go through a special permit specifically for the solar canopies in the parking lot. So that's my recommendation at this point, just given the issues that are raised by the engineering division and not wanting to hold up the school project as the director for CMLP moves forward with the solar project.
So so I understand this, the above, it changed from, what was it, 16.3 to 17.2% or something like that, but that is once this is done in full, right? When the solar panel canopies are added, there's not
Correct.
going to be a partial canopy done in the initial build out and then some added later.
No.
It's all or nothing, right? I mean, I shouldn't say
Yes.
nothing because it's going to happen, but
Yes.
so then I guess I'm confused. Why are we including the impervious surface portion of that in this approval if that's not technically in this at this point in time?
So what we were trying to do during this discussion, because there were questions raised about the solar canopy part
Yeah.
of the project.
Yep.
And we're trying to figure out a way that the impervious coverage for the solar canopies could be included in this special permit so that CMLP did not have to come back and go through this process again.
Yeah.
And so the consulting team, did a quick calculation to try and figure that out and try to incorporate that in this. Then once that came through and engineering division started reviewing things, there were additional questions. We met with the consultant team and engineering division and the CMLP superintendent, and additional questions started to be raised about the design of the canopies and snow coming off into the stormwater drainage detention basins so they didn't slide off into the parking lot, and you have issues with plowing again, and that raised other questions. And so it kind of just started the conversation rolling that there's too many unanswered questions. I think they can be answered. That's not the problem. It's the time frame in which the actual school portion of this project is moving at a faster rate than the solar canopy portion of the project, and not wanting to slow down the school permitting portion of this.
No, that makes sense to me. Yeah.
Did I get that right, Lorraine?
Yeah,
But then I still
absolutely,
have,
and sorry, if I might.
sorry, go ahead.
We tried to look ahead and say, if whatever drainage we're going to do it on the school side. We'd like to look ahead and understand what that impervious is, and not have them come back as their solar project and have to do some minor drainage mitigation. It doesn't make sense. But
Okay.
They're two separate contracts. They're two separate contractors, and our project cannot have requirements that the PV permits may have on the contractor for the school who won't be installing them, and vice versa.
Yeah.
So, we I'd say scrambled to try and accommodate this extra coverage and have it included as part of our scope. But they do need to get their own separate permits. But at least by taking care of this portion of it, we can keep that clean and I think separated.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I appreciate the clarification, and I agree with the approach.
Well, that all makes sense to me, except I still come back to Nathan's question earlier. since it's going to have to come back for a whole new approval in many ways, in many aspects for the solar canopies, should we be changing our recommendation to only reference the 16.3 number?
Yes, that's what I'm recommending.
Okay. All right. So then we should edit
Oh.
this report so that it says 16.3
Yes.
and
that's
not
what I'm-
17.2.
Correct. So when the superintendent comes back for his special permit, the changes to the there's additional from engineering's comments, the stormwater drainage. There's just additional information and design considerations for his review, and that information needs to be provided. And when the CMLP superintendent comes back for the special permit, he would just be looking to amend this special permit to increase the impervious coverage. So it may actually from the conversation we had with the superintendent and the design consultant for the PV portion of the project, the impervious coverage may only be 16.9 once they kind of change a design here and different things. So even the impervious coverage is not, set in stone at this point. It may be less.
I'm still unclear as to why then we're even discussing the solar canopies in this document at all.
So because this was a conversation at the last meeting, the consultant team provided the information. Once we got the information, it started creating additional questions. So this is my report and my recommendation should the planning board move forward to recommend approval to the Board of Appeals. This report would be modified into the board's recommendation letter, and the reference to the impervious coverage for the solar panels would be removed. And it would be back to what the original application was for, which is 16.3.
Thank you. Now I get it.
Okay.
Would we have this whole verbiage in here about the applicant inform the town staff?
No,
Project, so that
No.
would be all taken out?
Yes.
Okay, fine.
Yes.
Fine.
Sorry, I didn't make that clear.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, that would be taken out.
Okay.
So that's
Elizabeth,
my
am I
that's
allowed
my
to ask a
recommend.
question?
Sure.
So I know when we had the meeting with CMLP last week, one of the comments we had was that, to assist them in the permit, we could have a not to exceed the 17.2. But are you saying today that you'd prefer to take it out completely and let them make that incremental change?
Yes.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to understand. Thank you.
I think from a permitting standpoint, that's much cleaner.
Okay.
And also from a condition standpoint, it will also be much cleaner.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
The next is the applicant and the consulting team provided additional information and plans in support of the requested relief from parking. And I can bring up those plans in a second, but the most significant change is the school was able to provide a more final employee count for the middle school. Previously, they had the count at 140 faculty and staff. We're now at a total of 125 employees. Additionally, there was conversation at the last meeting for large events, having parking available, being able to park in the two dedicated bus lanes and the lower driveway. The fire department did review that and did not have any issues with that. During large events, they do want the main driveway to remain clear. And I can bring up that plan if the board if the board wants showing that additional parking for large events. So ultimately, there would be approximately 179 spaces for large events.
I don't need, if it's, if it's been designed in, I guess I don't need to see it at this point, if it goes to 179. Unless any other members want to see that.
I remember where the available parking spaces were, and now that the fire department is okay with it, it's clear enough for me.
There is the potential for on the lower parking lot to have 9 more spaces, but that hasn't been evaluated by the fire department. But so that may be possible in additional for the future. But at this point, I think it's the safe calculation is not there is. The requirement for a school of this size, and based on the faculty at 125 employees, there is a total of 150 spaces on any given regular day.
Just a question, if we're supposed to look at the total number of faculty and staff plus 1 for each classroom, what would that total be? I mean, what sort of relief are we being asked relative to?
Yep. It is.
Elizabeth, if I may, the answer is 192
yes, 90, yeah, 192.
by code.
Would be
And I
all the
forgot.
faculty and staff plus the 40 odd
Classrooms.
classrooms.
That's
Okay.
correct. Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And in terms of, I think you were going to come back with some numbers on what the total parking at Sanborn and Peabody are. I mean, what is the current parking availability at the combined schools?
Linda, you're correct. We were supposed to have that number for you. I don't have it. I apologize. We'll get that. We'll get that.
Okay, and it would be interesting to know how many are accessible, and how many are van spaces, visitor spaces. I assume there are no electric vehicles now. Just to have a sense of, I mean, I'm sure there's some arguments that you're saving, not having faculty go from one school to the other. And then I don't know if both schools have 100% or are they at capacity, or is there substantial excess spaces at each school? That would be interesting.
Is that information you feel, Linda, you and the board should have to incorporate into your recommendation?
I guess I just don't know. Honestly, I don't know really if we can just sort of, I think we need to have some reason to give a certain amount of relief other than just knowing that the full count of employees is, different. I just think it would be I think those are reasonable questions and reasonable data points to know before I would want to make a decision to give the amount of relief that's being requested.
Okay.
I'm not sure that I understand correctly, but my understanding was that the number of students at the 2 combined middle schools is not quite the same as what is being proposed for the new middle school. So I'm not sure how the current numbers at the two middle schools would shed too much light on the current application.
Well, I don't think the students are parking, it's the faculty that's parking. I don't know why we're supposed to use the number of classrooms in addition to the number of faculty and staff. I don't know what.
When I mentioned the number of students, I was using that on the grounds that the number of faculty and staff is related to the number of students, not it's quite true the students are not parking.
So I understand. I understand. I understand your request, and so it's not the number of students. It's going to be what is the parking is based on faculty and classrooms, has nothing to do with the number of students. So I think it's what you're asking for, Linda, is just that factual information on what's the faculty and number of faculty and classrooms for the two middle schools, the existing middle schools, and how much parking is available at each middle school?
Well, they have, I mean, yeah, I just think it would be useful to know how much parking is currently has been accommodated, been the current accommodation, just as a point of reference.
Okay.
Maybe they're adding staff, or maybe they're reducing staff with the combination of buildings. I have no idea. So, but I mean, if you came back and said, oh, there are 150 spaces combined between two buildings, I think I'd feel a lot, and there's no problem in terms of lack of space, then I would feel much more confident making a decision than if you told me there are 200 spaces currently available between the two schools. Then I'd wonder maybe that much shrinkage might not be healthy. I feel this is, I don't think that the staff has many options other than parking in the parking lot. So, and I don't, and parents and people who are vendors and people who come to the school to offer whatever services. I don't know how much excess parking above the staff level is required, other than the fact it's supposed to be one per classroom. I mean, somebody came up with that number once, and I just don't have enough to really question it.
Okay.
But that's just me, and I thought we were going to get a little more data at this meeting, so I asked the question.
Okay.
So that's just me.
And Andrew, Haley, Nathan, anything you want to add to that?
I mean, I understand Linda's request. I think if we're working strictly off of the sort of one space per classroom, or the metrics that are in place for that, in some ways I kind of want to target that rather than do what's been in place before. Mainly again to reduce, have minimal impervious surface and also encourage other modes of transport, even though I know that location is not necessarily the best for walking or biking at this point in time, but
Right off the rail trail.
well, yeah, but we have this conversation where there's not going to be an official connection to the rail trail from there, so.
Well, there would be an excellent connection if the town chooses to improve the sidewalk, but that would be entirely unrelated to this project, as it would be on
correct.
roadway property.
Right.
I mean, it's a very 20th century thing to overbuild parkings, and I actually have no idea if parking was overbuilt at the existing middle schools on general 20th century principles, but that's just my feeling. That, well, I guess I'm with you, Nathan, that the bylaw requirements and a consideration of whether or not we can reasonably reduce the parking with a waiver are, to me, the most important factors.
I would say my take would be if the school considers that they can accommodate their entire program with the amount of parking that's available. To me, that's the number we should be looking at, because the relief from the parking bylaw, again, if we're reducing the amount of parking, if the goal generally is to reduce the amount of impervious surface, and we know historically in the United States, parking lots have been overbuilt, going a little bit in the other direction, just because it's not super easy to park doesn't mean parking's not available. And where there's a will, there's a way. So I think I'm willing to entertain.
Well, I
this
think we should
number.
do,
Yeah.
I think we should do our due diligence and not simply take the school's word for it, because once the project is built, if traffic starts stacking up on Old Marlboro again, well, in some sense, it's not the school's problem, and it's our job to prevent that. But everything else you said, Andrew, about historical treatment of parking, I am behind.
Is it though? I don't know. Like, part of me takes the Cambridge approach to things. It's like, well, you can make it difficult for motor vehicle use, and that tends to move things in the direction that we are looking to do. And then, well, hold on one second. One other thing on that, and then, I'm also, remembering what happened with the high school in terms of parking there and everything, and while there was a lot of up in arms about the amount or lack thereof of parking. In some ways, I'd rather us hit under the target and have people come back and have to add to than overshoot it and have, an expanse of asphalt that's just sitting there unused for a vast majority of its life. That's, I guess that I could be alone in that, but that's where I'm at.
Well, I mean, Linda, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think the request for this, additional information is the reason for that request is not to make them have to build more parking. I think the reason for the request is to have the data that supports this requested relief from parking. No offense to the superintendent and, the school. I'm sure, they know exactly how many teachers that they have, but if this was any other applicant and they came in and said, well, this is the number of employees we have, and we know that we only need 10 spaces and not 25 spaces, it would be an entirely different question. I mean, and a different conversation. And that applicant would have to support that requested relief from parking. And that's what all of these criteria that got included into the zoning bylaw. So is that correct?
Yes, thank you. I also agree that we don't want a sea of asphalt that's taking up, adding to the impervious count, but I also don't want to, be trying to come up with the numbers that we want, because those are the numbers that we want. So I just feel that to make a decision, we should have the data, and I assume the school has the data, and that they can explain why we shouldn't go by the rules that we have. And I think we're looking out for other groups that will be coming before us, that will be asking for us to also waive parking requirements. And I assume, as Elizabeth says, that we should also be asking them for data and information, just so that we can support whatever our decision is. But I'm not of a view that we should fit the facts to the conclusion that we've drawn before we have the facts. But Elizabeth said it much better. Thank you, Elizabeth.
I guess the last thing I'll say on it is that the only reason I took that approach was, if we're talking about relief from parking, so obviously they are trying to target below, I'm losing some light here, target below what would otherwise be required. I guess I tend to want to encourage that because if we go and, I'm not saying turn a blind eye to it. I'm all for getting the data, but I think it begins to ask the question, okay, so what if the combination of the two existing schools is, like I think you said 200 spaces or something like that. Let's just go with that. Then, are we going to say, well, then we think, this level of relief is not realistic. You need to have more parking, which then begins to bring up other issues in terms of, again, the impervious space, and also just sort of configuring things in the space that they have.
I agree. That's a tough question, but I'd rather be asking the question now than after the school is built. And after people are, like I walk around near the high school and I see what's sort of happened to Laurel Street, and, it's completely parked up. And I just don't know if there's going to be overflow here and how that will be accommodated. People will figure a way, maybe a good portion of them will decide not, to forgo their cars or to drive with, somebody else in the morning, or get dropped off, or they'll take a bike. But other people,
Or God forbid, use the school bus.
well, not so much here. I think that, again, I'm talking more about faculty having places to park, but if they show up in the morning and they don't have a place to park, they're gonna have to find someplace on a neighborhood road or on a field or a piece of grass that looks like a parking space, which is what I would do. But again, I just would rather have some comfort that we're not forcing people into that situation.
Go ahead, Lorraine. You're muted.
Still muted.
Sorry, I was on the phone with Laurie. So we had the count at Sanborn, but we didn't have the count at Peabody. So I wanted to confirm with Laurie. So she said they have 60, almost 60 spaces. I think it depends on how you count one or two of them. 60 at Peabody, and we have 76. We know we have 76 at Sanborn plus 2 vans. So 136, if my math is right. 138 if you include the van spaces.
Okay, and so then the 150.
But we're reducing population though. So the population count for the school has gone down, the student count, which means the teachers also go down because you have a student to teacher ratio.
Lorraine,
Right,
you wouldn't
we don't-
you wouldn't happen to know what the existing classroom count for the two schools
I
is?
only know Sanborn. I don't, no, that's not true. Jen, Jen, can you pull up the space summary? because we do have the classroom count. I can do it as well. And then remember that because of the
But-
traveling teachers, you know, we have some teachers who are one teacher, like the art teacher who goes from Peabody to Sanborn. So she parks in Peabody for some classes and then drives over and parks. So it's the same teacher.
Right.
So that is, you know, that does, if you think that we have that for music, we have that for art, we have that for some of the sciences. So that will reduce that same traveling teacher.
But if I'm wrong, you told me that the total number of spaces at Peabody and Sanborn combined today are 138.
That's correct. 78.
So your proposed plan is for 150, which is greater than the existing number.
That's
Because
correct.
Is that correct?
That's correct. That includes accessible spaces. That includes the
Right.
special ed van spaces. That includes business spaces.
So
That
then
includes
my question,
ED,
of course, is,
everything.
well, why don't you eliminate a few spaces and have more impervious area
You mean have less
or
impervious?
less impervious area?
So I think the reason, I think part of that reason being is that they are providing, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lorraine and Michael, they are providing, they are required to provide a few more additional accessible spaces under the ADA requirements. They are providing, because the two schools combined, more school van spaces. So I think that's where there's the slight uptick. And, you know, you might have 5 visitor spaces at each school. So you want to make sure you at least have, you know, some additional visitor spaces now that you're combining schools.
I hear they only have 6 visitor spaces.
So
Correct. We have 6 visitors, but we don't have EV today at either school. You don't have the right amount of accessible spaces at either school today.
Right.
So it's a very complicated comparison because also there's fewer students being provided for and fewer classrooms. So then there should be even less parking required, but there's more parking required because of ADA and vans and so forth. So again, I'm coming to, we could spend a great deal of time with a very complicated formula to decide whether this spaces
No,
that
I'm not
here are, can relate to the spaces currently.
But it seems to me that we're in the neighborhood. I mean, in terms
yeah.
of number of spaces. That's what I wanted to determine, not that I want, you know, the precise configuration and count. But I think you've answered my question.
yeah. So Linda, and I'm not going to try and type this while I'm doing this. But I think with this information to add to this section, some of, this information that, currently with the Peabody School and Sanborn School, there's a total of 138 parking spaces. The total number of faculty and staff with the combined school is being reduced. Lorraine, I don't know if you and Jennifer were able to find the classroom count.
I did not. I was trying to stay focused. I'm sorry. Jennifer, were you able to?
That's okay. So I imagine that the classroom count is going to be probably similar between the two combined and the new school. It's going to be in that realm. And put in here the applicant is proposing 150 to take into consideration additional school van spaces because of the combined school, the requirement for additional ADA accessible parking spaces, and the addition of EV charging spaces. to get from, as you said, the 138 realm to the 150 realm.
Although the 4 EV spaces based on that are included in the 133. They're included as part of the, that they'll be used by faculty.
Yes, but I think ultimately, is that not in here? There's and maybe it's
So I'm seeing
Hang on.
44 classrooms combined
yeah.
existing.
Sorry, my brain's just foggy. There's 4 as part of this project, and then with the solar project, there's going to be an additional
5 or 6,
is it 6?
9?
There's going to be additional EV spaces beyond the 4. That's on the plan you sent.
Yeah, that's correct. We have conduit going out for future PV expansion. I
Right.
think hopefully I remembered to send you that.
No, it's on the one plan you provided.
Okay.
And I thought I referenced it somewhere in here.
Right there.
Oh,
12 more.
yeah, for 12 more EV charging stations.
Right.
So I think for Linda, I think I can take the information and this discussion and put that that metric into the report, if you think that addresses your previous concerns.
Yes, I mean, it seems to me that supports the fact that we're not being asked to give any more parking relief than the schools have already had. If you use the calculation of number of employees and number of classrooms. And we've not been hearing any complaints, as far as I know, in terms of in any difficulties in parking for faculty and staff or visitors. I don't think we've received any concerns or complaints, and so I think with the additional information, it makes sense to me to grant the level of relief that the school is seeking. It seems reasonable.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if someone wanted to make the argument that we should review the issue of the impervious space relative to tightening up the amount of parking, they can take the floor.
Okay. I think that kind of sums up that information, but I'll write it so it actually makes sense. And add the numbers and have that as part of the board's recommendation and discussion and recommendation to the Board of Appeals. Is that acceptable? Okay.
Yeah, I think the one comment I would add is that I feel like I keep coming back to this, but for the EV spaces, even the additional 12 that will be part of the next phase of that project, if you will. I feel like we shouldn't think about those as being additional spaces that are needed. They should be transitional spaces that already exist. Like we're not, I don't want us thinking of, we need to make space for EVs and maintaining the same fleet of, gas vehicles, parking area. We need to like constrain that so that the shift is into the EV spaces. I just,
Okay, so take that
Wow.
part out.
yeah.
Okay. Makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. And so most of the stuff for the special permit criteria is a repeat that I will make consistent with the discussion that the board just had. The report will be consistently will be for the 16.3.
Yeah.
And the rest of Sue's wonderful grammatical edits. And then, so under the fiscal impact, this portion here, this was something that the board, briefly touched on, but also was part of the applicant's information they provided. So I think Sue's question is one where, the board can discuss whether they feel, this is an appropriate statement that the board wants to include as far as the fiscal impacts. It's kind of challenging because there is going to be a fiscal impact on for this, on the community for this project. So most of the time, other private projects, they're trying to figure out a positive spin for fiscal impact.
I don't see why we need to mention that. I mean, I don't think that what we're granting in terms of the relief of height and the parking relief, it has, I don't think we've considered that. I think we've considered those based on the merits of what has been presented and not on some argument about increased cost. Yes, there's increased cost, but that is not why we made our decision. And I think that just weakens our decision. So I would take that out personally.
Yeah, I agree.
So
I mean, not
based
that
on,
it's not true, but nobody wants to see them go back to the drawing board.
Yep.
But I think they've been to the drawing board, and I think what we've said is that we're okay with it.
So then not only should we take out what I was wondering whether or not we should add, but we should take out that whole part about if it wasn't granted because the town would have to go find a new site or start over. It's only that we see no fiscal impacts to the town based on
for
the three
relief
things we're
from
granting
parking,
for.
a height
Yeah.
waiver, or impervious coverage.
Right. That's what you're saying, Linda? I see the sense in that.
I think so, yes.
Yeah. It seemed to me that if we were going to say those other parts, we would have to go on, but your solution of just not saying any of them also works for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the purview of the finance committee, not the planning board, to say that we have to approve this now or not because of fiscal impacts. I don't think fiscal impacts, in term, the height, the impervious content and the parking aren't impacting
The tax base, for example,
the tax base, employment or town
or use of
services.
ambulances and police and fire.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Read that. Yes. Thank you.
How's that?
I think that's great.
Yeah, leave it at that. Yep.
Yes, except please put a comment in after employment to match the one before including.
Okay. And this just gets deleted. So at this point, most of Sue's comments with the conditions of, I don't know what this little extra word is. It's in the letter from CMLP. I'm going to assume that it just gets deleted.
Yeah.
So that's Sue's question. Everything else are, edits, grammatical edits. For the fire department question, I can't answer.
Yep, it's in their letter. I
imagine-
actually checked. Yeah.
I imagine there is going to be more than one Knox box at the school, but there may only be one Knox box with a lockdown control system.
I guess this is a question to go back to the fire department, was it to say, should it have been at each Knox box, or should it have been at the main Knox box?
I will definitely ask for clarification before this gets sent to the Board of Appeals for their meeting Thursday night. And I think that's it.
So in terms of the waiver for the impervious area, did anyone have questions about that? Or is that?
Well, we all seemed okay with it at our previous meeting when it was at a figure of 16.3, and it's still at 16.3 after much discussion. So unless someone's changed their mind.
Yeah, I didn't know if there were still outstanding questions that anyone might have, because we didn't talk about it that much this evening.
I don't have any additional ones for it.
Okay.
Going back to the 16.3 at this point anyway, so.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay.
All right. So where are we at? So what are our next steps?
So the options for the board are to discuss your recommendation and take a vote, and you can you designate one board member to review based on the conversation tonight and the changes, review the recommendation letter to the Board of Appeals tomorrow. You'll see it first thing tomorrow morning.
I know I cannot volunteer for that for tomorrow morning, so would somebody else be able to do that in that time frame?
I hesitate to promise. I am traveling tomorrow, and it would have to be, I'd have to squeeze in quick and pretty early, and I just don't know if I can. I mean, I can try. I can't promise.
Andrew, Haley.
Sorry, what was needed tomorrow morning?
I will take this report and turn it into the actual recommendation letter based on the changes tonight that the board discussed.
And then you just need somebody to review it tomorrow morning, or?
Yes.
I can do that if nobody else can.
Okay, great. So now all I need is somebody to make a motion.
I'd be happy to move, but is the motion to be seen? Do I have to make it up off the top of my head?
No, it would just be the planning
Yeah,
board
basically.
moves to recommend the Board of Appeals grant, and then you can
Read that.
just read that.
Okay, there it is. All right, the planning board moves to recommend in favor of a special permit. Is that the proper language?
Close enough.
Close enough. Under sections 4.3.1, 6.2.11, 7.6, 7.7, and 11.6 of the zoning bylaw to demolish the existing Sanborn Middle School, construct a new middle school which includes a height waiver, relief from parking, and relief from impervious coverage greater than 15% in the groundwater conservancy district.
I second that. And then let's take a vote for who I can see. Linda,
Yes.
Sue,
Yes, and Heather, if you're taking notes, notice I inserted and relief from impervious.
Yes, that's fine.
Haley,
Yes.
Andrew,
Yes.
and I am also a yes.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate it.
We'll see you Thursday night.
Elizabeth, you won't be attending tomorrow afternoon for the
Public Works Commission.
correct? No, okay. So we'll see you Thursday.
But the Public Works Commission, they will, you all and they all will have this recommendation letter before tomorrow.
Okay, very good.
Okay, well, you'll have it tomorrow morning. Okay, great.
Excellent. Thank you so much again.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Let's move on to administrative business. So we'll cover the zoning bylaw amendments, of which Elizabeth, you sent around the updated version.
Yes. So I don't, if you don't mind, I'd probably like to start with mobile food establishments. I had a pretty detailed conversation with the police department today about the whole hawkers and peddlers license. I'm now wondering what got shoved out the back of my brain, because I now know more about that than I need to. But the short answer is that the current wording and the current wording in the draft bylaw that the board received is acceptable under item B, that the mobile food establishment just get all required permits and licenses from the health division and the police department is sufficient. There isn't anything else that happens that would have an unintended consequence and require an additional change in the zoning bylaw somewhere else. But the one thing I did notice is that in all the revisions, there's definitely a typo for an ice cream truck. We have the ice cream truck being exempt from the number of days, exempt from, and I think that's item C. And I think that's open for discussion for the board. Whether an ice cream truck should be exempt from the number of days or not. it started with, I did have, and I'm not sure whether the board thinks that item A should also be included. I don't necessarily think item A needs to be included because the language specifically says that they are allowed to travel on public roads and not park for extended periods of time, because, you know, an ice cream truck goes down the road, it parks, it vends ice cream, and then it, you know, moves along, but they're not physically parked for very long periods of time.
Yeah, I was reading that. I think that really addresses E. But maybe it,
Yep.
I guess the question would be, what would be the harm in including A there?
Well, so including A and E.
Well, I mean, it's interesting. It's just because the way that you wrote G, yeah, you call out C, which makes sense. And then you basically sort of verbally exclude them from E because you address the public, you know, right of way basically issue for them. So, I mean, maybe you could shorten it up and drop all that and just include exempt from items A. Where I lost my place now. A.
Well, so
maybe.
I'm not necessarily sure that that actually exempting it from E. Because
Yeah, you say extended periods. Yeah, it's different.
Well, and also under G, it mentions public roads twice, but not private roads at all, whereas E covers both public and private roads, which is, if anything, confusing. If a food truck vendor parks on a private road for an extended period of time, is that?
so this, right, so this is a, you know, that's a separate question whether you know, the board wants to include private roads. They're private roads, and you know, if those property owners want a food truck to park on a private road, they can allow a food truck to park on a private road if they wish. It's their road. So I think, you know, this is another item for discussion, you know, whether the zoning bylaw should be enforcing who parks on a private road when you currently the town doesn't have any enforcement ability on private roads.
And if we don't have any enforcement ability, are we even allowed to add one under, the Massachusetts Zoning Act or some other law? It seems unlikely.
Yeah, so that may be a question for town council.
I also
Before you
don't
go
see a
that
reason
far,
to prevent it.
It's before you even go that far of asking the question, is there a desire to regulate that right now? I mean, we could take a straw poll and just determine whether it's even worth making that. My inclination is to not, simply because it's private, and that's kind of you are not, they didn't make them public for a reason, and that's their prerogative, and they want to let something park, and they can deal with their own parking enforcement rules. That would be my take, but if other
Same
people feel
here.
strongly the other way, I'm
Me
happy
too.
to.
I'm
Was
with
that in
Andrew.
the older draft? I don't remember the private road being in the older draft. Was it?
It wasn't, so all I do is I add things for discussion from the board when somebody else looks at this and says, well, what about private roads? Okay, well, I don't know. I'll put it in there and they can talk about it.
Well, okay, so I am sort of swayed by the argument that it doesn't make sense to have it in there. So, and I like that it wasn't in there before.
Okay.
So, so unless there's a strong opinion to include private roads, I would be okay with removing that. Okay, so back to the original ice cream truck.
All right, so 52 days in a calendar year. Does the board have an opinion on whether an ice cream truck should be exempt from that, or if they?
I would say yes, only because I'm thinking summer and that's longer than 52 days. So, well, at least in my mind, I would like it to actually be warm enough for ice cream trucks more than 52 days out of the year. But
You're getting your wish more and more. Look at the last 3
yes,
days.
this is true. So yeah, I would be okay with it being when we were thinking and talking about food trucks, they are the use case is different, right? So an ice cream truck drives around a neighborhood. It could come every day. It could come every other day. I would be okay with exempting them.
I think the conversation with the limiting it a mobile food establishment is that balance for the impact on the actual restaurants.
Yeah.
So I don't think restaurants look at ice cream trucks as impacting their business. So okay.
I think we should change it to, I can't think what language, frozen confectionery truck vendor, so that we don't freeze out vegan sorbet vendors just because they don't sell dairy treats.
Ice cream truck vendor is an actual term under state law and the food code.
Oh, okay. In that case, I'm all right with it.
So it actually means something, and under state law, so again, more than you really want to know, under state law, you have mobile food establishment requirements, and there's actually a subset specifically for ice cream truck vendor.
And hopefully in state law, an ice cream truck vendor does not actually have to vend ice cream and can vend sorbet and popsicles.
Well, yes, I don't think it has to.
Then we're covered. I do have a very strong feeling that under item C, we should say a maximum of 52 days. Thank you. I also have a fairly strong feeling about a comma in item A after the first occurrence of property. That right there, just where your cursor is, so that we don't make it seem like the town manager has to authorize things on private property.
And then this last statement right here, this was part of the conversation. Nathan and I went to the Concord Business Partnership, and it was actually a suggestion from a restaurant owner that have a special permit process if, let's say, Barrel Farm wanted to have a one-day food truck event. You know what, they can go through a special permit, and for that one-day event where you would be looking at exempting item D. And then I think we did item E in case maybe somebody wanted to hold a food truck event in the Kais Road parking lot, or I'm not sure why I put E.
Yeah, I had a question
Well,
on E as well, but
but again, in the Variable Farm food truckapalooza example, what if somehow they wanted to be able to creep into the public way a little bit I'm not sure that they would get a special permit for that, but it's conceivable to me that it might be reasonable.
Now that I'm thinking about it, it may be, let's say, the, I don't know, what's another example I could,
We have some public ways that are really excessively wide, such that
so
parking
what is
in
it?
the right of
So,
way.
For, Ag Day, don't they block off what, Walden Street? Or,
Yeah.
It's-
I don't,
yeah.
Or Thoreau Street or something, but yes.
I think
Main
that
Street.
was, I'll, yeah. What I have to do is I have to write down all the people I talk to who provide me, their questions and suggestions, and I can go back and ask them when I forget.
Well, I mean, I just think of there are neighborhoods where it's perfectly acceptable to park your car all day long. There doesn't seem to be a justification in not being able to put a food truck there. But maybe that's just a special permit process, like a simplified permit, I don't know. Yeah.
Well, a special permit seems moderately reasonable in that case, because you might not mind having it parked in front of your house all day, but your neighbors might.
Oh, yeah, I mean, give the neighbors an opportunity to, like, public notice, an opportunity to object kind of thing. That
Yes.
makes sense to
Right.
me. But I don't know
Yeah.
I don't know what that process looks like, and I don't know if you could put that on someone, another town department, and be like, sure.
Well, the special permit process is, there's defined requirements as part of, a notification to abutters within 300 feet, and the legal notice in paper, and those are standard things. So the process to just go through the Board of Appeals when it's, doesn't need a recommendation from the planning board or anybody else, you're talking about it's, roughly a 2.5 month process.
Okay, so if you wanted to actually have a food truck park on the street, it would take 2.5 months.
Yeah.
What you're talking about?
If you wanted to have some type of event, where there's more than 2 food trucks or having a food truck park on the street. So this section, as far as granting the relief, was more thinking about the no more than 2 food trucks can be located on a property at the same time. So, at this point, I think we can probably delete E when this will go out to, again, Concord Business Partnership, all the, restaurant owners that I know that I have contact information for. So maybe this will come back up for your next meeting. And
What's the harm in just keeping it? I mean, it's still got to go through a rigorous process, and
because
Somebody
it's a
came
special
up with
permit process, there's no harm in keeping it.
Yeah.
To your example, Andrew, if a block wanted to have 1 food truck, they wouldn't go through the special permit process to park it on the street. Somebody would just have it park on their driveway. But maybe there's a block that wants to have a block party. They are going to close off, maybe Haley's neighborhood wants to close off the block, have a block party, and have, 4 or 5 different food trucks parked all along the street. For the block party, they may go through the special permit process to be able to do that.
Elizabeth, are streets considered municipal property?
No.
Okay.
Well, no, I mean, a road right of way is the public road right of way. Municipal property is a term of ownership.
Okay.
So,
Okay, so it's in no conflict with the town manager decision on municipal property. I just wanted to,
No, but I mean, I'll make sure, that's my understanding. And, when you look at the zoning bylaw, it talks about uses and municipal property. It's talking about land that's owned by the town. And
right,
that's separate than from the public road right of way.
Elizabeth, under item D, can you change the word can to shall? All the
Yep.
other provisions say shall. I'm also not sure whether the board may grant relief from item D or E, or whether it's items D and E. But that's kind of how you think about it. And since we're still shopping around whether we should include E, let's not worry about it now.
Mhm.
Oh, beautiful.
Then the other thing I did was, so this can be deleted. And then I didn't know if there was anything else the board wanted to add for the explanation, or now that we're, it's kind of, this is in more of a final draft form. I can send this around to people, get their input and questions, and then at the next meeting, the board can take those and may have to beef up the explanation to address, make sure that you're addressing issues and concerns, if that sounds like a good way to proceed.
I mean, we should also just add that this was shared, well, before obviously we made these changes. It was shared with the Concord Business Partnership already, so we may get some additional feedback from them. I mean, it was just sent yesterday or something, so we'll probably get some additional or hopefully get some additional feedback overall.
Okay, so that's something that can be added. Who this goes out to, and who provided feedback. Okay.
I will say, I think during that meeting with the Concord Business Partnership, we got, I thought, a mostly positive response to this, which was great.
Yeah. I don't think anybody had any, negative comments.
Yeah. I guess I should rephrase that as an entirely positive response to it.
Okay. All right.
You want to do fast food so that we can kind of knock that
Sure.
one out?
Sure. So I did get, some feedback from Sue. Thank you very much. It's mostly I think all in the explanation. Grammatical corrections.
Yeah, the only even marginally substantive thing was about the word only. And
So
that's again in the explanation.
So your one question dealing with drive. So I think currently the zoning bylaw only speaks to drive-in restaurants.
Nope, it says drive through, THROUGH in one place and drive in another place.
In the actual, in the zoning bylaw. I'm not talking about the explanation, I'm just talking about the zoning bylaw.
I have just frozen, so I can't even find, there's two different sections. One says drive through and one says drive in. There we go. Section 3.3.
Yeah, so currently 334F. 3. Oh, 334F.
which is formula business something.
Oh, well, I'm okay, so I'm not willing to try and correct drive through THROUGH in 334 as part of this. That would be a separate warrant article. And I think that's a consistency thing that we can change for next time.
Well, actually, on the contrary, we could make it be drive-through everywhere. To me, it makes more sense to say drive-through, because after all, don't you drive into every restaurant's property, whether you're sitting down or whether you're getting drive-through takeout?
I mean, if we want to get technical about it, I think of them as two different things. The drive-in is like a Sonic type place where you go, you park, you consume the food in the car, delivered to you at the car, versus drive-through, which is what pretty much everything uses now, where you just drive around through a window.
So maybe we should say drive-through everywhere and leave 3.3 mumble alone. But if other people think drive-in is more appropriate, that's fine. And no, I don't want to change 3.3 this year.
Well, I'm not sure the town wants drive-in restaurants either.
I don't want a Sonic.
Well, the standard way of covering these things is to say drive-in or drive-through in the bylaw to make sure that they are both prohibited.
Which you can add that to this warrant article.
Say, yeah, just do that, because then
Yeah.
it covers the bases.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. 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 All right, so I will make that with that okay, I don't care. I will add the comment. I don't know what. Oh, I'm not sure what the rest of that sentence was supposed to say, Sue. But it's so I added under the existing bylaw, a national fast food franchise chain could open a restaurant in Concord, provided they modify their service model to be sit down only, or be able to document to the building commissioner that over 50% of the business is dine in.
That works for me. That makes sense now.
Okay. And then as I was going through all of my paperwork for this, I noticed that the one item that kind of spurred all of this, at least for town staff, was the bubble tea restaurant example. So I added a paragraph, and I need to just fill in the changes as far as when you do have a restaurant and have to have 12 seats. What are those other items in the food code that kick in? What were those items for the bubble tea restaurant that the food code kicked in? I do remember for the plumbing code, it was having that unisex handicap bathroom, and then the sewer improvement fee, which, off the bat would be a minimum of, over $40,000. So I thought it was important to add this information as well.
I think that's excellent, although you should insert minimum of in your last sentence there. Sewer improvement fee would be a minimum of.
Well, no, I mean, for 12 to 28 seats, it's 1,000 gallons. The sewer improvement fee would be.
Right, but
40,000.
but somebody could open a larger restaurant.
Well, if you go over 28 seats,
Then it's a different
it's
tier.
for every seat, it's an additional 35 gallons per day.
So for a larger restaurant, the sewer improvement fee would be higher,
Yes.
possibly.
So
So so the sewer improvement fee for such a restaurant would be.
the sewer improvement fee for a restaurant with between 12 and 28 seats is $40,070. The fee goes up for every additional seat after 28 seats. It's 35 gallons per day additional flow. And the sewer
Right.
improvement fee is $40.07 per gallon per day. So I don't know if it's necessary to explain the sewer improvement fee.
No. I don't think we should explain the sewer improvement fee. This is another grammatical issue that the previous sentence says something about restaurants 12 to 28 seats. And then this last sentence doesn't claim to be restricted to restaurants with 12 to 28 seats. It reads like it's categorical for all restaurants of any size.
No, so Title V states the minimum wastewater flow rate for all restaurants with 12 to 28 seats is 1,000 gallons per day.
But doesn't Title V also control what happens for restaurants with more than 28 seats? This is a grammatical issue, and I'll take it up with you in an email at some point when both of us are less tired.
I can clarify it. I mean, for every seat beyond 28 seats, it's an additional 35 gallons per day, and which equates to $40.07 per additional gallon per day.
My only problem is that when I read the sentence, the sewer improvement fee would be $40,000 and change. I read that as the sewer improvement fee for any restaurant of any size would be 40,000 something. That's too late at night to think about that. There, beautiful, thank you.
Perfect.
I had one comment, which is in the paragraph starting additionally above that.
Okay.
And it's just that you bring in the issue of ghost kitchens. I'm not sure that everybody knows what a ghost kitchen is, and then I guess it led me to wonder, are those allowed in Concord, and is that going to be the next article that we have to approve ghost kitchens? So I wasn't sure that you even wanted to raise the issue of another model being ghost kitchens in this discussion.
Oh, okay, I see. So just take this sentence out.
Yeah,
I would leave
Yeah.
this. I would leave the sentence, but just take out such as ghost kitchens. Does that make sense to you, Linda, or do you think the whole sentence should go?
I just wasn't sure. I mean, I think it's true, but I wasn't sure what other models we might point to, of things
Oh.
then we don't have in Concord, or do we have everything we need? I don't.
Fast
Oh,
casual.
to me, what the sentence now is saying that it's not just that there's been no evidence that fast food restaurants are a problem, but that there's increasing national customer and restaurateur desire for fast food as an example of a model other than full service. And there may be other examples, but we're not talking about them right now. I think people will assume it applies to fast food because we say it does.
Oh, well, we don't really want fast food or drive.
But that's what this article is allowing.
Well, not
So
in
my recommendation is if two planning board members who have a better understanding of what it is you're trying to do, and one sentence is raising this amount of confusion, that just to take the sentence out.
Yeah,
I'm okay with taking it
Yeah,
out.
it's not adding any value if
we're the ones who should know. And if we're the ones having this much about it, then take it out.
So I still have not had time to do a couple more, go to a couple more places and find examples. If any board members want to visit some and then get back to me, we can add those, but it's just going to take me a little bit longer to get a couple examples, but I was happy to, at least find the salt box kitchen example. I think the one space per 300 square feet works.
Good.
But I just need to get out there and do a couple more examples.
Good.
And that was it.
Okay. This one is coming along nicely.
I think so.
So I want to take a moment to note that the time is, and this time I'm sure my computer is correct, it is almost 10 o'clock. We have, Elizabeth, correct me if I'm wrong, we have 2 more meetings before these need to be in, right? We have
Yes. I think I at this time just getting a consensus on whether the board wants to move forward with the combined business residence article for just the affordable housing component would be helpful, because I can then, at least send that around to the different housing groups to at least get some feedback. It may not be for your next meeting, but definitely by your meeting on December 13th, to see if, there's support for at least that amendment to the combined business residence to define the affordable housing requirement.
And so in that situation, we would just have that one meeting to basically iron out.
No, you would have, because you're going to have a meeting January 3rd.
Yeah, okay.
So the day before the warrant closes.
Okay. So, okay, that I'm fine with that. So has everyone had a chance to think about this, have strong feelings one way or the other?
Well, I think we should move ahead, and I still feel that we've never really, I think, had a real discussion of it, that we ought to require some amount of affordable housing for a project of any size, even a token amount, and to be paid only in terms of a fractional unit. so that we show to the townspeople some support for affordable housing at every level, and so that it's a and so that we actually do get some tiny additional level of affordable housing funds. I believe that currently we're seeing at least 10% for 5 and 10 units. So obviously at 0 to 4, at 1 to 4 units, it could only be a fractional unit. It wouldn't even be half a unit. And rather than 10%, it could, when I said a token amount, it could be 5% as a fractional unit. But it's my strong opinion, but obviously I'm just one member.
Anybody else have thoughts or comments on doing this and what's been written so far?
I can incorporate that into the draft and then send it around to the housing groups to get their feedback.
And this is mostly why I brought it up tonight, not that we have to discuss it tonight, but that if we don't put it in tonight, then we can't get people's opinions more generally about whether or not it's a good idea.
Anybody else? I mean, I'll just say I definitely want to, move this forward. So, Elizabeth, yeah, I guess if you want to add Sue's comment about.
Okay, sure. All right, I will do that. And so for developments of 4 or more units, a proportional in lieu payment to the Affordable Housing Trust.
You mean 0 to 4?
Oh,
Yeah, well, 1 to 4, but
1 to 4.
yeah.
oh, yeah.
Well,
Yes.
or 0 to, I'm fine with 0 to 4.
Not
because
building
0
anything.
times 0
The
remains
money
0.
anyway.
So 4 or fewer units.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'll have to just think about, it's for developments of 4 or fewer units, a proportional in lieu payment to the Affordable Housing Trust.
And then we have to specify at what percentage. Is it 10%? Is it 5%?
And I mean, I can put, it's up to the board. Do you want to start with 5? And
I only say it could be lower because you have mentioned, Elizabeth, how, and it is true that the smaller the project, the greater the overhead. So perhaps asking 10% of these very small projects is too much.
I think let's start with 5%. You'll send it around
Yep.
to the different groups and we'll get feedback from them whether they think 5% is reasonable.
okay. All right. Sounds good.
Okay. All right. I need to go back to.
I do have one other quick item. So part of the discussion with the new middle school dealt with the solar canopy project and their requirement they will need to come in for a special permit for a large scale ground mounted solar facility. And Somebody's, my husband already went to bed, so. They're currently, and I'm gonna share my screen. So currently for our large scale ground mounted solar, there are specific setbacks. It's 50 feet from all of the property lines. But there is a special permit waiver provision to allow that setback to go down to 10 feet. So long as the solar PV installation does not abut a residential zoning district or a use. The parking lot for the middle school and the canopies for that parking lot extend into the required 40-foot 40-foot setback from Old Marlborough Road property line. So the options are either to amend the zoning bylaw to specifically allow by special permit waiver provision to that setback requirement for town projects on town land, regardless of whether it's within a residential zone district or abuts a residential zone district. Again, keeping the, it has to be at least 10 feet. The alternative for that project would be the CMLP would have to, when they file for the special permit for the facility, request a variance to the front yard setback. I explained all of this to the CMLP superintendent and provided this potential draft to him with the caveat that I will bring this up to the planning board. However, when the planning board moves forward with a warrant article, they spend a minimum of 6 months talking about the warrant articles they wish to move forward. And at this point in time, there is only 4 meetings. So the planning board may not wish to be the proponent to move this article forward, and the CMLP superintendent would make this a request to the select board that they move the warrant article forward.
Well, I have one question. Currently, it says does not abut a residential zoning district or use. Now, the the middle school project is on a public way, but the public way is in a residential zoning district, correct?
Right, so that's why this says, it just says for any town-sponsored proposed large-scale on municipal land, the board can waive the dimensional requirements. So it takes
So this
out,
would mean that if the town wanted to, it could take some other land that is a town-sponsored municipal land project and build a large-scale ground-mounted array within 10 feet of some homeowners' private property so that it's shown directly onto their property.
the town could file for a special permit.
Yes. Okay.
Whether
would
that
hopefully
special
be-
permit gets
yeah.
granted or not, I
Yeah.
don't know.
Okay, just checking,
Yeah, it doesn't mean the town gets to build it.
just that they
Means
get to file
it-
for a special permit.
It
Yes.
gives them the right to file for a special permit.
It is tricky though, because it's harder for a town board to say no to a town project, in some sense.
So the discussion tonight isn't about the merits of this bylaw. The discussion
wanna do
only
it.
for tonight is whether the planning board feels that in the next 3 meetings, you would be willing to sponsor this or whether I informed the superintendent that he should take this to the immediately take this to the select board and have that conversation with them about sponsoring it, if this is the direction he wishes to go. The alternative is when he does file for the special permit to go through and to make an argument for a variance to the front yard setback.
That was going to be my question that would sort of determine whether to take this on or not. Can you just explain kind of briefly what the difference would be there? Because if they can just, if CFLP can go and get a variance for this particular project, why would we need to build this in as a zoning bylaw amendment?
Why would we grant a variance? Because a variance is only for extraordinary circumstances particular to the property. I was just reading state law. It went on and on. I'm not sure that it would qualify for a variance.
So
Go
I
ahead,
have to
Andrew.
drop off. But I would say that they should take it to the select board, because if we are having this much trouble even determining if it's something that we are interested in as an initial matter, getting through the details of it is going to be way too, our timeline's not going to match up. But I have to drop off the call, so have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
I actually think like it's a fairly straightforward, like once this conversation is had and discussion is had on it, like the as you've drafted it, like the bylaw amendment itself would be pretty quick and easy, like it's as you've already done it. So I think from the perspective of like being able to get it done and drafted, like it's not going to be a lengthy thing, as it's already kind of drafted here, and so it's more just about like people getting up to speed about why it's necessary and if it's necessary.
Which, the select board can do that as well.
Yeah.
To the question of a variance, to your question, Nathan, the standards for granting a special permit under state law are not as high. The threshold is not as high as a variance. And the variance, deals with the size, shape, topography of the lot and the circumstances owning to that lot not being the same as other lots in the neighborhood. I think, to your point, Sue, I think the argument for a variance, it can be made. It would be somewhat challenging to reach that threshold. I'm not 100% confident that, but you can. It has to also, think about the shape of this lot, the municipal use, the groundwater conservancy district, preservation of the existing woods, and which requires the new school to be pushed more towards the street. And so I mean it would, as I think about it through my head, it would be a challenge to come up with that high of a threshold for variance. I'm not saying it couldn't be done, but
it would
it would be harder than just having a zoning bylaw amendment.
That answers my question. So I am for, I would be okay with, adding this on to ours to move it through. I'm hopeful that it's not that intensive of a bylaw versus some of the other ones we've talked about. So
I agree.
having very little time to think about it, I'm still trying to decide, is it more appropriate to say, we'll have the select board sponsor it, and then that gives us a few months to decide whether or not to endorse it and publicize it and discuss it in public hearings and so forth,
Yeah.
without having to leap right now. And, the select board doesn't have to think as hard as we do specifically about zoning bylaw issues. But on the other hand, it does look pretty straightforward.
Uh,
But is there a chance that the
But-
select board says like, we don't have time for this? Either.
I mean, you have 3 more meetings. You would know before the warrant closes if the select board didn't want to move it. I do somewhat agree with, Sue's position as well. If the select board were to put this forth, what would happen is it would be on the planning board's public hearing for zoning bylaw amendments, and the board is required under state law to after the public hearing submit your written report and your recommendation on all zoning bylaws. So you would hear the conversation and then you would have to vote your position. So it does kind of give you a little bit more, I'm going to say, autonomy in time to hear the questions and concerns and vote for your recommendation. Because for a planning board to put forth any zoning bylaw amendment, the initial position is you obviously agree with the zoning bylaw amendment because you're putting it forth.
Yeah.
Well, we are allowed to vote down our own article, but that would be pretty extraordinary. I mean, and by vote down, I mean to vote against for it in our written recommendations.
So,
If that is an inkling on any board member currently, then I would say then the board is not in a position to want to put this forward. If there's
It's not an inkling in my mind right now, except that because this is coming to us at the last minute, we haven't had
Right.
time to consider what
Right.
problems there might be, and something might come up. And I would hate to be put in the position of voting down our own.
yes.
so for
I do
whatever-
feel a little more comfortable with saying let the select board put it forward, and we would probably end up recommending it, although I really wouldn't want to say for sure right now, but
So for what it's worth, Sue, I spend most of my day looking at solar laws and if you need to get up on, you'll have a million questions and I will be able to answer them all. And so I feel very confident that we'll get there one way or the other. This isn't going to be, assuming the project isn't going to ask for 0-foot setbacks. There's other ways to mitigate the concerns for if you're asking for less than 50 feet, what could the consequences be on the neighbors and how do you still mitigate that as part of the special permit process?
Yep.
So I don't feel strongly one way or the other if it's us or the select board right now, but I think it should be easy enough to move this next town meeting.
Although Haley, it sounds like you have positioned yourself as a great person to be in the mix in drafting and making sure that it is.
As
that it is
somebody
shepherding along.
who just got denied a variance request on setbacks for a solar project, I feel strongly about this topic.
I take that back then. I take that back.
well, but that's a big argument for having it go through a special permit process, not a variance process. Although there's still, of
Right.
course, I don't mean to say
Exactly.
that every project should get approved, just that
All right, can we just take, I mean, there's 4 of us here right now. Can we just take a quick kind of straw poll on how we feel about this, whether we want to take it on or put it to the planning board? So just kind of go with who I see. So I'll start with myself. I'll say I'm okay with taking this one on. I think it is it is sort of in our wheelhouse, so I would be okay with that. Linda,
My initial, I haven't thought this through, and so my initial reaction is I really don't like making zoning decisions based on like the exception. And then I don't know what the unintended consequences are. So I feel unfortunately on the, just superficially negative about the process here. And I think I do need to think about it more. And for that reason, I'm happier to sort of say, yeah, if the select board wants to move forward with this, then fine. But it doesn't, there's so many zoning things we want to accomplish, and this doesn't seem to me to rise to the level of other things that we have turned down that I feel are more important to the town overall. But I have to think about it. I'm sorry.
I think the issue is that we have to make the decision as to whether we're going to take it or pass it to the select board now, given the
I don't
time.
think that's quite true. We could say, let them take the select board, and then if the select board says, but this really should be planning board lead, if at all, then we would be able to reconsider, but we'd only have 2 meetings left.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure even if the select board went with it, we'd have to decide if we supported this or not. So I think
not till March.
Yeah.
not till March. Okay.
Yeah.
Elizabeth,
Yeah.
given the timing of construction and approvals and everything, like, would there still be, in a worst case scenario, chance for another town meeting, or does it have to be done this next year?
I don't know. I tend to think
I mean, sooner is better for them. Certainty is better, obviously, but just from a timing perspective, I didn't know if it.
yeah,
I
don't know, but I tend to think waiting a whole nother year and a half would not work.
Especially with the plan. Yeah, they
Is
gotta plan
this
it out.
in their budget of 100 and whatever it is, 13 million?
I don't know.
See, I mean, yeah, I mean,
It is.
I don't know, and I don't ask.
It wouldn't be in the plan right now if it wasn't, so.
Well,
But I mean, I think it's awesome that we're doing, like, everybody else is doing solar canopies. Like, I just saw Lincoln's new ones over at their school, and like, I actually didn't know they were doing it here, but I think it's amazing.
Okay, I don't want to get off track because we're getting
Yeah,
later.
but
so-
it's kind of amazing, but I don't know if the town should have the right to do it everywhere, at any time, independent of if it's a residential district
But it's a
or
special
not.
permit
Still a special
process.
permit.
It's a
It's
special
a
permit
special
process.
permit process, which, yeah, I mean, I guess we can say no to the town.
well, it would be the zoning board of appeals. So, once again, I'm going to go with my personal recommendation is if among only 4 planning board members, there
Yeah.
is this much discussion.
Punt it.
I think it is better that the select board put this forward, and this allows the planning board to have the discussion,
Yes.
hear comments at the public hearing, and make a more informed decision on your recommendation after you have had time to think about the unintended consequences and those other items.
Yeah.
So that's, that's just my recommendation.
For what
Yeah,
it's worth, in a lot of towns now, for canopy solar, it's just by right, it's not considered under this category of zoning anymore, so. Because it's not ground mount solar, which is usually what the concern is about. It's not, canopies and rooftop are now tending to be in their own category.
Which, which is still, that is the same for, let's say, like one canopy solar. It's still a structure, it would have to meet the setbacks. It would not go through the process that CMLP would have to go through. The ground mounted system, the canopies for the school is something like, what is it? 52. Hang on a second.
But they're not, to say they're ground mounted is a bit confusing because.
Well, no, it comes under the definition. In the section, it says that, a system that has a rated nameplate capacity of at least 250 kilowatts. So the system for just the ground mounted solar portion is, I think they said like 52 megawatts.
No,
that's
kilowatts,
way too
maybe
big.
kilowatts.
No, it triggers this section.
52 megawatts is ginormous.
Yeah.
What is
But all I'm saying is like
Which it is, the solar canopy is over almost every single parking space other than the bus parking.
right, but all I'm saying is most, I don't know when our solar law was written, but most solar laws today separate out a canopy. Parking lot canopy would never be called ground mount solar anymore. Ground mount literally means like it's maximum of 10 feet off the ground, not like super tall canopies. So you don't have concerns about glare and all the other things that residential butters typically care about.
Like the REI, that's the only one I can think of. Parking, do you know REI
I do.
Natick.
Is it like that?
Go. I don't know about REI, but so the Discovery Museum in Acton has solar canopies, parking lot canopies now, and then the Lincoln Public School renovation, they've got their canopies up now. So maybe just, but it's if it's covering over a parking lot, then yes, those are solar canopies.
I couldn't even figure out from our zoning bylaw whether canopy mounted counts as ground mounted or roof mounted.
Well, it's new enough that again, like most towns have been revising their solar laws to better account for it, because it shouldn't be considered in the same way that like traditional ground mount solar would be treated.
I have a little list, and that's on my list for things to see if we need to update, but there wasn't any time to bring these things up this year.
So I'm gonna bring this back to, what does the board want to do with this? Now that it's 10:25.
Yeah, I agree with you, Elizabeth. I think based off this conversation, it sounds probably better to send it to select board and then have the time to determine whether we want to support it or not as they write it.
And if they want our help writing it or our review, they could ask us for it. But I kind of think like with this very short time, they should take the lead of putting it on the warrant.
Okay. Lastly, you have 3 sets of minutes.
Oh, did I jump the gun?
No.
That was my vote.
Well, it doesn't, I mean, I think I have the consensus.
Yeah, I don't
So-
think we have to vote on this. We
No,
just-
you don't.
Okay,
Can we have a motion? Can I make a motion that we approve the minutes of August 23, October 11, and October 25th as in their most recent versions?
I will second that. And with the four of us here, and in support of it or not, Linda,
Yes.
Sue,
Aye.
Haley,
Yes.
I'm also a yes. All right, any liaison or town planner updates?
Not at this time.
I will just sort of reiterate what was said earlier, our meeting with the Concord Business Partnership, I thought went well with what we shared with them. They were supportive of what was discussed. So yeah, that was good. All right. And any last general public comments? If anybody's still awake. All right. I guess we can call it. It is 10:27 on November 8th, 2022. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.